Well, let's see here. I'm looking at Obama's official U.S. cabinet photo, July 26, 2012, so admittedly 2 years ago. 1, 2, 3, 4. Other than Obama himself, I see 4 African Americans. So our first black president had 4 African Americans in his cabinet. I think that's right. Yeah, 4. And I'm actually going beyond the cabinet. I think this is a photo. It says cabinet, but it looks like it's actually larger than the cabinet. 4. So there's one more black person there was in 2012 on Obama's cabinet than there are on the Ferguson police force. I believe there's 3 there. As a matter of fact, there are more blacks on the Ferguson police force than there are black Democrats in the U.S. Senate. I think there's 1 black Democrat in the U.S. Senate. And why is that? When the black community delivers 90% or more of its vote to the Democrat Party. How many black governors are there? Not many. I'm just playing the numbers game. Paint by the numbers, right? You know, folks, Democrats have controlled our major metropolitan areas, our cities, for decades. Democrats have had long periods of controlling state legislatures and governorships in many of our bluest states. Democrats have controlled the presidency for the last 6 years. And in the past, under LBJ, then Carter, then Clinton, now Obama, they advanced big government policies. Democrats hijacked the civil rights movement after causing its birth in the first place, especially in the 1950s and 60s. Because make no mistake about it, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, they are first and foremost left-wing Democrats. And what is the state of the African-American community in America? Despite such complete Democrat control of the cities in some of our blue states, despite decades of Democrat control of Congress and often the presidency, what is the state of the African-American community in America? And who is actually slowing or obstructing its growth and progress and success? The local police? Capitalism? The Republican Party? Eric Holder wants to have a discussion about race. Says we're cowards. He doesn't want to have a discussion about race. He wants to lecture us as a radical leftist. But let's have this discussion. February 2014, Mike Flynn, Breitbart. The black teen unemployment rate jumped to 38%, January 2014. Dramatic increase, almost a 10% increase over December's 35.5%. Overall, the teen unemployment rate for all races was 21%. But black teen unemployment is always between 30-some% and 40% under this administration, and many of the past administrations. Obama doesn't want to talk about that. Sharpton doesn't want to talk about that. Jackson doesn't want to talk about that. They want to talk about this juggernaut of white cops and community after community after community shooting innocent minorities. Say what? Well, apparently. Let's look at some more, shall we? Gateway Pundit. Also, this year earlier, 5 years into Obama's presidency, the number of African Americans participating in the labor force has hit rock bottom. PBS, quote, the drop in labor force participation was sharpest for African Americans. This is January of this year. Saw a decline of 0.3% points to 60.2%, the lowest rate since December 1977. 37 years. The lowest employment participation rate for African Americans in 37 years this year under Obama. The rate for African American men fell 0.7 percentage points to 65.6%, the lowest on record ever. The decline in labor force participation was associated with a drop in the overall African American unemployment rate of 0.5 percentage points to 11.9%. And among African American men, 11.6%. There's your inequality, Mr. President. There's your inequality, Mr. Holder, Sharpton, Jackson, Farrakhan. Dean Baker, who wrote of this, economist, co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, told PBS, contrary to those who spin the falling labor force participation rate is mainly coming from retiring baby boomers. Young workers are dropping out by the millions. He said it's easy to see the big fall off on labor force participation is among prime age workers, 25 to 54 years old. That is down by 4 full percentage points. That is equivalent to 5 million people in their prime ages. They are not retiring at age 50. How about that? Is that racism? Which raises the question, ladies and gentlemen, is big government statism racist? Are those who promote it, regardless of their race, regardless of the skin color they were born with or claim, are they racists, in essence, through the policies that they promote that so severely damage not just the country generally, but blacks and other minorities overwhelmingly? Overwhelmingly. Ready for a shocker? Here's a shocker from last year from my good friend Peter Ferrara writing for Forbes. Ready for this one? Of course you are. More than 3 times as many jobs were created for African American women in Reagan's first term compared to Obama's first term, even though the population was much larger in Obama's first term. So he's talking about absolute job numbers. Now, jobs for African American women rose by 15.1% in Reagan's first term compared to 2.6% in Obama's first term. Now, we have Reagan, a conservative, traditional Republican who embraced free market capitalism, and we have Obama, a radical leftist community Democrat organizer who embraces centralized big government socialism. Inequality, anybody? Racism, anybody? More. Teenage female African Americans employed fell by 19.1% in Obama's first term, compared to a decline of only 1.5% in Reagan's first term. The point is the black community improved, and improved more under Reagan than it has under Obama. There's your headline. The unemployment rate for teenage female African Americans rose by 5.7 percentage points in Obama's first term, compared to just 1.1 percentage points in Reagan's first term. The poverty rate soared under Obama in his first term to 16.1%, higher than when the war on poverty began, and that covers primarily women. Child poverty has soared as well to over 20%, with 8 million American children growing up in poverty. Oh, the problem must be not enough deficit spending, not enough taxes, not enough government, right? Wrong. The Census Bureau reports more Americans in poverty today than at any time in more than a half a century since the census has been tracking poverty, at almost 50 million. And again, that's mostly women and their children. Real median household income has declined by nearly 8% in Obama's first term, which is the equivalent of the middle class losing 1 month's pay every year. Income for the bottom 20% of income earners has declined by a similar amount. Income has been rising under Obama only for the top 20%, which is why income inequality, quote unquote, has perversely, given Obama's rhetoric, been rising under Obama. Now, in Reagan's first term, by contrast, the decline in average and low incomes, which had persisted for several years when he entered office, was reversed. And incomes for every income quintile, from the top 20% to the bottom 20%, turned around and rose for several years. George Washington University professor Henry Now summarized in the Wall Street Journal 2 years ago, quote, "The U.S. grew by more than 3% per year in real terms from 1980 to 2007, created more than 50 million new jobs, massively expanding a middle class of working women, African Americans, and legal as well as illegal immigrants. And per capita income increased by 65%, and household income went up substantially in all income categories." So the answer is free market capitalism, conservative, traditional politicians, and one of the big problems is the Democrat Party. One of the reasons why the Democrat Party today and its mouthpieces, Sharpton, among others, took over that funeral, that Michael Brown funeral. Well, I know the parents asked them, but there they are ready, is because they don't want the American people, specifically they don't want minorities. And particularly, they don't want African Americans in this country to know what they're doing to them and what they've done to them with big, centralized government. Destroying their neighborhoods, destroying their families, destroying their local school systems, destroying their communities. That's what has happened. And so, we get this orchestrated effort from the Department of Injustice and Eric Holder, from the Oval Office and Barack Milhouse Obama, and the most despicable mouthpieces like Al Sharpton, distracting the American people and the African American community from its really punishing them, which is liberalism, which is the Democrats. As long as there is a Democrat Party, racism will live. It'll live in different forms, it'll live in a different context, but racism will live. Because in many ways, in different ways, it has been one of the core elements of the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party, the party of slavery and segregation, the party that fought the Civil Rights Movement, the Democrat Party, which has now hijacked the Civil Rights Movement, has a number of its favorite buffoons, mouthpieces, who coordinate with it. The idea that Al Sharpton has ready access to the White House is a huge embarrassment to the entire nation. Eric Holder, a radical, dressed up as Attorney General, has every intention of bringing federal charges against this police officer in any way he can. Facts be damned. Evidence be damned. He doesn't have the information. The grand jury operates in secret. This is the new civil rights movement, they say. What's the new civil rights movement? Attacking law enforcement? Looting and burning? Innocent people's shops? It's not a civil rights movement. That's anarchy. Anarchy. So I'll be the one who stands up generally for police officers. Oh, I know there's a few that do this and that. Is there a few lawyers that do this and that? A few civil rights leaders who do this and that? A few Democrats who do this and that? I get it. Imperfection. Imperfection. I think O'Reilly reported the other day that 99.9% of arrests are peaceful. No shootings. That's a pretty damn good record, the way I see it. Did you read about that Southern police chief, I think he was in Georgia, who was murdered stopping a car the other day? Did you see that, Mr. Producer? I sent you the article. Gunned down, killed in cold blood. Nobody gives a crap. They don't want to know who shot him, what the race was, what his race was. Yeah, well, what the hell, right? So this funeral was turned into an Al Sharpton community organizing event with threats and the usual attacks, because Al Sharpton is now one of the official spokesmen for this administration and the Democrat Party. I want you all to know that. Al Sharpton. Doesn't get any lower than him, but there he is. And he's proudly providing counsel to the President and the Attorney General and anyone else who will listen.